Hi, I'm Dolly Vasta, and welcome back once again to For Art's Sake. What you just saw was a teaser from a performance of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it was performed by the Randy James Dance Works. And we're going to be seeing a little bit more of it later, but right now, I want to talk to Randy James himself. And here you are.
Hi, Dolly.
Needling me on the side. And what did you just say as I kept scooping up your
I was
work?
originally going to call it The Lion, the Witch, and the Chase Lounge if I didn't get the rights from the C.S. Lewis estate.
So now that you're an overnight success.
Right.
Yeah.
Overnight.
Overnight.
39 years overnight.
Overnight. Okay, so how long have you been head of this dance company, though?
I've had the dance company for 5 years. I started dancing, as you know, when I was in 8th grade with Elliot Toposlav's productions in children's theater in the summertime.
Didn't all of us?
That was, that was my first dance experience, and then I kept dancing in high school, and then I went to Rutgers for 2 years, and I've had a very varied background,
But you traveled, you were with other dance troupes?
Yes. I danced in Atlantic City for 18 months, doing the same show 6 days a week, twice a night, and it was quite an experience. I learned a lot. There were tigers and waterfalls and elephants and showgirls, and you never want to perform with animals because animals...
Especially behind them.
Behind them, exactly. Because we always used to follow the Tiger Act in the Playboy Fantasy Review, and we followed it in motorcycles, and we always had to ride around what the tiger left on stage afterwards, which was always very difficult. Because you had a showgirl on the back, doing this arabesque on your motorcycle, and I didn't know how to drive a motorcycle, much less on this tiny little stage, and then had to avoid things like that.
Well, better a tiger than an elephant.
That's true. We had an elephant one time, a little baby elephant, and it fell off the stage and almost landed on this table, and it was just, it was an education.
Well, it is. It is. We were just talking before about working and the early years of working and the crazy gigs you get and what you have to deal with.
Exactly.
And the crazy circumstances.
You just have to go with the flow,
But I think they help you grow.
They do, that's the thing that was my philosophy, that I tried never to say no to anything to do with dance. So I've been a show dancer, a lot of people said, why do you want to do that? And I thought, well, it's, it'll be fun for a while. And then I did touring companies, I've danced in ballet companies, I've tap danced sort of, and then I did modern dance. So I think all those experiences help my company to be what it is now.
Did you ever work in classical ballet, though? Yeah,
I started actually with the Princeton Ballet, and I danced with them for 3 years. The first experience was after 2 months. I was in their Nutcracker, and I was a rat, which was not exactly classical ballet. But, and I had this big costume, but, everyone could tell because I had very large legs, and they were like, oh, that must be Randy with the large thighs, And, but then I graduated to be Snow King, and and then I've danced Nutcracker actually for 18 years. Last year was the first time in 18 years that I had not done Nutcracker and done other ballets. I just figured it was time to. They don't have a king in Nutcracker, and I made it to the prince, and so there's no else to go, and they're not going to cast me as Sugar Plum Fairy or Dewdrop, so
okay. What made you actually decide to go into more modern dance rather than stay with classics?
Because the thing is that because I started kind of what most people perceive as late, starting really taking formal classes at 19, 20 years old, that I knew I was never going to be a principal dancer with, New York City Ballet or ABT. I mean, I did dance with the Metropolitan Opera Ballet, and that was, a very big ballet company. But I kind of wanted to dance more. I didn't want to always just be supporting the woman behind and lifting her and doing those kind of things. So I had seen Paul Taylor's dance company on Channel 13 on Great Performances. And at 27, I was in Puerto Rico doing a nightclub review, and I thought, I really want to try something else. So I went to go see that company dance, and I loved it. I fell in love with that kind of movement. So I went to the school and took classes there, and I was there for 2 months, and I heard about this audition for Dan Wagner, who had danced with Paul Taylor, who was an original member of Paul Taylor's company, who they both danced with Martha Graham years ago. So I went to the audition, and when you dance for Broadway, you know, when you go to audition for Broadway shows, you go up 2 hours ahead of time to sign in. You know, there's thousands of people. So I went 2 hours ahead of time to this audition. I'd never been to a modern dance audition, and I was the only person there. And there was this man cleaning the floor. I thought he was the custodian. So I'm just sitting there talking to him, and I'm looking at my watch, and we're just talking for an hour and a half. And I found out later that was Dan Wagner cleaning the floor. So I learned, you know, if you're going to have a dance company, you know, cleaning the floors is part of the job. And I think because I talked with him for that hour and a half, he got to know me as a person. And he kept on saying, "But you've never done modern dance before?" I said, "No, you know, I don't really even know what it is." But I just fell in love with his movement, and then he hired me out of 60 men that came to the audition, and I danced with him for 8 years. And it was just some of the best times of my life. You know, we toured all around the country, and I loved the work. It was very physical, it was very challenging, and it was very emotional, you know. So it fed a lot of my desires.
What made you leave him then and decide to start your own company?
That's a good question. You know, I actually left the company because I was offered a job teaching for a semester up in upstate New York at SUNY Brockport, and I had to make the decision whether I was going to stay with him or take this position. And I thought, okay, I'm almost 35 years old, you know, I could continue dancing with him longer, but you know, honestly, the last 2 years I really wasn't learning. I was just kind of maintaining what I was doing, and I was getting tired of doing that. You know, I wanted to be challenged some more. So I actually didn't even think I was even going to start a company when I left, but then there I was in SUNY Brockport teaching, and I thought, okay, well, now you've done it, you've left the company, what are you going to do now? And I thought, well, I had been choreographing for about 5 years up until that point on other different groups, and I just thought, well, I'll just try to see, you know, if I can start a company. And now 5 years later, we're waiting to hear about the Kennedy Center. You know, it's pretty amazing.
Well, you got great reviews for the show at George Street.
It's an incredible success. You know, I did this actually, this project, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Thankfully, I want to mention the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation is very supportive. They gave me a $15,000 grant to do this production. I would have never been able to do this production without their help financially. And, you know, we perform in New York, we perform all around the country, throughout the world, but in my own town here, you know, in Middlesex County, I live in Highland Park, but I grew up in East Brunswick, it's hard to build an audience for modern dance. There's not a tradition of people going to see modern dance. You know, people always go see the Nutcracker at Christmas time, and they go see musicals, but modern dance, people kind of go, you know, what's that? Are they bugs crawling around on the floor?
That's and I don't mean to
no.
to intrude on your
If you don't interrupt me, you'll never get a word in edgewise. I have my mother's gift of gab, you know.
But wait till your mother watches this.
She'll be laughing.
I think though the word modern dance, you're right. The word dance frightens people. It's not just even modern.
Right.
It's dance.
Right.
Immediately they equate it with the word culture.
Right.
This is something they should almost stay away from because we don't really know what it is.
Unnecessary medicine, you know.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go see it once a year just because it's good for me.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I picked this. I didn't pick the story. My goddaughter, who's 6 years old, who dances with American Repertory Ballet. I asked her. She comes to see all my shows, and she's a brilliant dancer, and she remembers all the steps after she comes to see the work. And I said, Sarah, if I could do some kind of story that you think you would like to see with your friends, what should it be? And she said, you should do The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I remembered back from my childhood that I remembered that story, and I reread it. Excuse me, I reread it, and I thought, yes, this is really an accessible story. There's so many rich characters that I can do many things with, and so I wrote the grant, and they gave me the grant, and then, you know, we rehearsed for 3 months and did the show.
Well, you know, you said something very interesting, that Middlesex County is the hardest place almost for booking. Mm-hmm. But I found that it was because the grass is always greener on the other side of the street.
Of course. You know, I mean, the New Jersey PAC is not really looking at my company up until now, because we're doing this thing and it could be on their family series, but because it's kind of homegrown. I mean, when I go down to South Carolina companies say the same thing. They say, wow, you can get all these bookings in the state, but barely they'll even return my phone call. And it's always kind of like, oh, the New York companies are better, or somewhere like from Russia they're better. It's like being away from New Jersey does not necessarily mean better, and that's what I would like to try to do with my modern dance company, is really be a stronger presence in New Jersey.
You know what I think they equate that with? I really believe that local people say or think that local company is not professional or
Exactly.
good.
Right.
It is amateur.
Right, and professional is a state of mind. It's not whether you're getting
Right.
paid. I mean, I learned that from you. I learned that from Elliot. It's just like, it doesn't matter how much you're getting paid. It's really just the integrity of what you're doing out on stage. So when I performed in plays in the park, I thought that was professional. When I did Elliot's Children's Theater, I thought that was professional, and it was, if you think of it as that way. And so it's not that it's this local kind of unprofessional thing.
But it's true, and it's a shame because it really deters a lot of good companies from working.
Right, it does. But I'm supported by the State Council of the Arts, and that kind of has been a stamp of approval for a lot of people. They see that logo on my materials, and they go, oh, well, must be pretty good. And now that we've gotten funded by the Dodge Foundation, and especially if we get this gig at the Kennedy Center that I'm waiting to hear about this week, I mean, if I could throw that name around for a while, people will certainly be very interested in the company, more than they would have been if we had not been there.
It certainly will look very good on your resume.
Right,
Shall we leave it at that?
Right.
Open you up to a lot more grants.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And other presenters too. When I was speaking to him 2 weeks ago, I mean, I was just dying. He's talking to me on the phone and telling me dates and money, and I was just like, wow, I'm talking to the Kennedy Center. It kind of freaked me out.
Don't let me blow this voice.
I know. I mean, after I got off the telephone, I ran around the house for 2 hours, screaming, crying, calling my mother, calling my best friend. I was like, I just talked to the Kennedy Center. It's, it seems, but I don't let it get to my head, because it's just like I enjoy dancing for middle school kids in New Jersey or the rural South Carolina just as much as I do the Kennedy Center. If you wait just for those great reviews and those great big houses, you're going to have a very unhappy career. You have to take every opportunity and just enjoy what it is.
Well, I want to get back to The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Right.
I've got it. I've got it. Now I've got it. Good. When we went to see it, I really thought that I did not know the story.
Right.
And I really thought that it was something based on Oz. It kind of sounded like that to me.
Right.
And I dragged Joe along.
Right.
And he said to me, a dance company. That's what I'm talking about.
Sure.
A dance company on a
Right.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
I said, yes. He watched every bit of it. He was as fascinated as I was. And I was so thrilled with seeing a production that had so much quality to it. And I told you this afterwards.
Right.
And it was especially thrilling for me, having known you for so
Right.
long. I think you
Well, taught me dance,
oh, thank you.
Well, you did. I watched you. I mean, I watched you. You choreographed some of those steps, that we did in Children's Theater. I mean,
Gee, I thought they looked familiar. There are only so many steps.
there are only so many steps.
There are only so many combinations and so many steps,
Yeah.
and
It's just
everything
how
is
it's how you
derived.
do them and how
Right.
you put them together. There's
Right.
nothing new under the sun.
I stole from a lot of people. All the best.
Exactly.
Gower
Well,
Champion,
Twyla
Jean
Tharp
Kelly.
said that. She said,
That's
if you don't
right.
steal from the best, then
Give up.
give up.
But before we give up, I want to run another piece.
Great.
So let's take a look at it.
Okay, great.
You were not dancing with a company. Why?
Well, yeah, I danced with the company for the first 3 years, but I just found it too difficult, because I do the business part. Up until this year, I've done almost everything myself, I have a board of directors, and Jana Dooney is my president of my board, a high school friend, and she does a tremendous amount of work for me. But a lot of it, I just have to do. The bookings, just getting self-producing is a huge job. And I just found it too difficult to keep on dancing. I have a big ego, and I don't want to go out there and dance badly. And I don't want people to say, oh, what's that big old fat thing doing on stage, I really don't. And I've had a huge career, I've danced all around the world, and I didn't start my company to prolong my dance career. And a lot of people do that, a lot of modern dancers, Martha Graham, Ernst Cunningham. I mean, I'm not sure if that's the reason why they started their company, but they dance until they're like 80. And I'm just, I'm not interested in that. I'm very satisfied with choreographing. I'm very satisfied with teaching, and I haven't totally retired yet, but I didn't do this show, because it was too huge of an undertaking. I mean, 15 dancers in 3 months to do this hour-length piece. I had an artistic advisor, Bessie Schoenberg. She was with the company for 4 years. She recently passed away last year at 91 years old, but she was an incredible mentor to me. And she kept telling me, if you're in it, Randy, if you're in it, you can't see it. And I thought, that's very simple, but very true. And I think I've become a better choreographer now that I don't have to say, oh, well, I'm over there, and I have to choreograph something easy for me because I'm getting older, and I have beautiful dancers, so I want to feature them, So that's why I don't dance as much. I might be dancing in our George Street season in June, but just maybe one piece.
What you just said is what I found to be true, is that if you were in it and you were choreographing at the same time,
right,
you could not really concentrate on what you were doing. You really couldn't put your focus
it's hard.
into what you were doing, because out of the corner of your eye, you were watching, whoops, someone's off.
Right.
Someone's off.
Exactly.
The arms aren't right.
Right.
And then you yourself are not right.
Right. You're not giving it 100%. And you know what that's like. And unless I can go out there and give it 100%, but, I got so tired of before a show, 5 minutes before the show, someone saying, well, where's this costume? Where's this? And then I have to deal with it because, it's my company. So I didn't want to do that anymore. It wasn't as much fun. And if it's not fun, then why do it? And I didn't want to prolong it in that way.
That's good, because very often you really do. You see dancers that are really beyond their prime out there.
Right, and they get bitter and they get insecure, and I don't want to do that. I mean, this is the best time of my life running this dance company, and I don't want to. And I want the company to become successful, not because I want to become famous, but I want to give the dancers a living wage, and I want to give them the experience that I had about touring around the country and throughout the world, and I think that I can give them that better if I don't dance in the company.
Do you miss dancing?
I dance when I teach, I dance when I choreograph, so I don't miss it. Once in a while, when the applause is at the end, you kind of go, but
that was nice.
It was nice, but then I go out there and I bow, and then people applaud. And,
do a little time slip.
Yeah, but I don't live for the applause. I mean, it's nice, but,
I don't think it's just for the applause. I don't think, and I've read a lot of stuff and by a lot of dancers, and they say the applause is what they live for.
Yeah.
I never thought that in my own head.
Yeah.
To me, it was the music.
The music.
And the whole feel that you feel from your feet on through your body.
Exactly. You did it for yourself, and that's the best reason to do it. Because, Bessie also said to me, she said, if you read those good reviews, you're going to have to read the bad reviews. And, and she said, just do it for yourself. I mean, she was my artistic mentor, and she used to give me a lot of feedback. But after she, would criticize me for an hour, constructively, she'd say, well, just do whatever you want now, and do whatever you want to do now. And that's what I try to do. I try to do what I want to do, what my vision is, and I try not to let it be affected by what other people have to say. And, I think that's what it's about.
The striving for perfection, though, that's pretty tough. There is a time when you have to say, okay, I have worked as hard as I could.
Right. Well, that's what you do.
And I did the best as I could.
Right, and that's the thing, sometimes a week before, like when we opened this show, I barely was finished choreographing, and it was a very scary thing for me, and I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to do the best I can, and we'll present it, and then maybe I can go back and look at it later and change some things. But I just try to be as honest about what I'm doing as possible, and that's why I don't try to think about success. I don't think about what the audience is going to love. I just try to be about as honest about what I want to say in the work. And that's why I was really pleased with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that people were very receptive to it, because it was a little scary, you know, because I've never done a story before, and it was a big responsibility. It's a famous story, too, that a lot of people, I think, had read the book and had expectation about what it's going to be, you know, who are the beavers going to be, who's Lucy going to be, and that was very satisfying to sit in the audience and see that people really enjoyed the story.
But
What?
but before our time runs out,
Right.
okay, you are going to be performing again at the George Street Theater. And what is this show? Susie, no, wait a minute, Susie, well, I have it here and I'm going to get it right. Susie and Swoozie's Soiree.
Right. That's one of the 4 pieces we're going to be doing on the concert. It'll be different, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was one story. I'll be doing 4 separate, you know, repertory pieces. And this is a very funny piece. It's very accessible. People really enjoy it. We usually end the concert with it. It leaves people, you know, smiling and happy. And that's what I want. You know, so often people perceive modern dance as a very astringent thing, like we talked about before. And I go see some modern dance concerts that I want to commit suicide afterwards because it's so depressing. But, you know, and I have serious, dark work, but I also love joyous work, too. And so that's why I often end a concert with this.
Well, that's
you
what
know.
I always called the I am a tree syndrome, which really is what has tuned a lot of people out of modern dance.
Right. That's
That-
very true.
The really stark.
Right. Well, they're almost doing it for themselves, and that's fine, you know, but don't expect people to pay good money to come see it and enjoy it, you know,
Yes.
because that's a very small minority, you know. So our concert is at the George Street Playhouse, and it's June 12th, 13th, and 14th, and it's a Friday, Saturday evening at 8 o'clock, and then we do a family matinee at 3 o'clock. And so that matinee will have some of Susie and Swoozie's Soiree, and then some other stuff that we'll be talking about modern dance, and kind of like a lecture demonstration almost, to kind of explain, because a lot of people have never seen it before, and I think that it would be very accessible to children and to families.
Well, Friday and Saturday nights, will you
Friday
be
and
doing?
Saturday we'll be doing Susie and Swoozie's
Oh, I
Soiree,
see.
but a little bit more adult kind of material, you know, maybe a little bit more serious, you know, but still, you know, people will be, I think, pleased with the work. But we won't be doing any kind of talking in those performances.
I think the real keynote to anything that is successful is it entertaining?
Right.
It doesn't have to be all sad or all funny.
Right.
It simply has to be entertaining.
Right.
And I think your work is definitely entertaining.
Thanks, Dolly. I appreciate
It really is great. And
Thanks.
I know our time is starting to run out, and I really want you know, our audiences to stay tuned in when we finish, because over the credits we will be running some of Susie and Swoozie's Soiree. Say that 15 times
Right.
really fast.
I like the way that sounded,
It
though.
says-
All those S's,
it has a
Susie and
Susie.
Swoozie's Soiree, you know.
You have a
It kind of
speech- I'll tell you, you have a speech problem. You have a real problem.
but it makes you laugh, though, and that's
Yes.
what I wanted the
It
piece to
is.
be.
It
you
is.
know? Yeah.
And your work is like that. And what I
Thanks.
wanted to say to my audience out there is, please, if you enjoy dance of any kind, you will enjoy Randy James' dance work. You really will. Get out to see it at the George Street Theater in June, right?
Right.
In June?
Yep.
Okay? So stay tuned, and we're going to run the works. I'll see you all next month. In the meantime, take care.